All right. Well, welcome to our March 2nd meeting of the year. Dennis or Rob, one of you guys want to do the roll call?
I'll do it, Rob.
There you have it.
Ms. Pecora,
Here.
Mr. Gadali,
Present.
Mr. Cohen,
Present.
Mr. Conyer, Mr. McCarthy,
Here.
Mr. Hanson, Mrs. Lanzetta,
You just came on.
Hi.
Ms. Gatto,
Here.
Mr. Bodges,
I'm here.
Mr. Wilkin.
Here.
Mr. Baden,
Here.
Mr. Brown,
Here.
Miss Welton, Mr. Watkins,
Here.
Mr. Almquist. I know you're here, Frank. I saw you. Mr. Markowitz. I know Victor's here. I saw him as well. Mr.
Yep.
Mr. Rudikoff. Mr. Travers. Mr. Murray.
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Present.
And two Kingston areas are vacant. And the Saugerties town is vacant.
Dennis, Mr. Hanson just logged in.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
And so did Mr. Murray
Thank you, Mr.
and Ms.
Hanson.
Walton. And Walton too.
Thank you. So we have a quorum.
All right, excellent. Hopefully everybody got a chance to read the minutes. Are there any corrections or comments about the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept them, McLaughlin.
I'm Quister, I'll second.
Okay. Any of those opposed? Any abstentions? We have the minutes are approved for last month. Okay, on the education training opportunities, I noticed that Mary Ann sent out a couple of emails. I think it was yesterday, one about some stuff in Rockland County, looked pretty good. And then another one for NYSERDA. Does anybody else have any other training stuff they know about?
I attended the Orange County one on the comprehensive plan last night, and it looks like the month of March, they're calling it their March Madness. It looks like they have like 4 or 5 at least more trainings in the month of March. Very informative, a lot of repeat. It was about comprehensive plan with regard to green energy. The presenter was really informative, had a lot of good insight into the topic, and just in general was a good training. And I think there were at least, like I said, I think there were at least 5 more trainings that they have coming up in March, and a few in the first week of April. So if anybody is looking for, it looks like they're doing them all by Zoom. So if anybody's looking for the ability to log in and do it from your home, it was pretty straightforward.
Okay, yeah, I was going to attend that one, but something came up and I wasn't able to do it.
Cindy Lanzetta, I just wanted to mention that I had sent this to Mary Ann tonight, but the DEC Estuaries is doing a conservation overlay zone webinar on March 23rd from 1 to 2:30. And as I said, I just sent that to Mary Ann, so she'll be sending that out, I hope, to all the board members.
Okay, good.
Probably I get it out tomorrow. Cindy.
I'm on Orange County's mailing list, so when I do get them, I usually forward it.
Tom, we can't hear you, Tom.
I'm on Orange County's mailing list. Can you hear that?
Yeah, now you're in.
You're a little garbled, but yes.
All right. I'm on Orange County's mailing list, and when I get them, I forward them to Mary Ann. So when they do
Okay.
send them out, you should be getting, everyone should be getting notice of that.
All right, good. All right.
Tom, could you send me those? Can you, I'm sorry, Drew, Tom,
Go
can
ahead.
you send me that list? So I'm aware of it. I had not seen it, and I'm not on their mailing list. I don't know
All
why.
right. I usually give it to Mary Ann, and she talks to you usually about it, I think, too. But I'll put you
Okay.
on it as well.
Thank you. And I'll talk to Orange County.
All right, time for community reports. Anybody got anything they want to report from their community? All right, I'll start. I don't think I mentioned this last month, but some of you are aware in Boyceville, we have a Maverick Health Center, which is really run by Nuvance. And Nuvance has decided to pull up stakes and leave that facility and move everything into their Woodstock facility. So we're losing some medical capability in the western part of our county now. And there's a, not connected, but as a side thing, the owners of the property, the Nuvance owned the business, but not the property. So the owners of the property are pushing the town to go into the flood buyout program. So that'll probably happen also. So any other community reports?
Yeah, Drew, this is Glenn from Gardner. I just wanted to let you folks know that the town board last night passed a motion to refer its new comprehensive plan to the county planning board. So you'll be seeing that shortly.
Oh, good. All right, thanks. All
Yeah,
right.
and I could just say that the staff has had an opportunity to look at that. The town has sent us that in the prior to that, when their consultant was working on it, to give the staff an opportunity to look at it. So we look forward to seeing.
Glenn, do you have any idea how long it took Gardner to come up with it, the comprehensive plan?
I think not as long as they thought. They worked with a consultant who was very efficient and a number of committees, and I don't want to misspeak, and Dennis may know from some of the other drafts, but I think it's been about a year or so.
Okay, that's pretty quick. All right, well, moving on.
I got one.
Oh, go ahead, Vince.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope.
So the village authorities awarded the bid. I can't remember who got the bid, but anyhow, to do the dredging for the Blue Mountain Reservoir for our drinking water supply, and that'll be done by the fall, that project up there. It's something that has to be done every so often.
All right.
Town of Rochester, a couple updates. We're in the process of securing our consultant for the Bridge New York grant that we got for the Boyce Mill Road Bridge. And the board has decided we're going with for people who don't know, the DOT has a preferred list of 15 vendors. You can either go with one of, you have to either offer it to all 15 vendors, or if you go outside, then you have to go through a specific process of vetting. The board decided to send that letter to the 15 vendors, and that will be going out by the end of this week, asking them for proposals. And the other thing is, I want to give just a little shout out to a great success story of a project that we saw, I think either early 2021 or maybe it was late 2020, but it's called deli to go. It's opened up on Route 209 where the Rainbow Diner was. They started out open just Monday through Friday, closed on Saturday and Sunday. They're doing so well. They're now open on Saturdays as well. And it's for a town that has not a large supply of eating places. It's been a great success, and you know, everything this board and the local planning board asked for, they accommodated and did, and it's just a real success story for our community. So
I've been there. I use the drive-through to get a sandwich.
the whole thing is drive-through. It's initially they were going to have 6 tables, and because of the pandemic, they went to 4 drive-through windows, and it works really well. You just pull up at one and make your order and wait till they hand it to you and you leave.
I've seen it. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah. So,
Good.
thank you.
All right. All right, moving on. Planning board reports. I don't have anything from the chairman or the committees at this point. So I'll turn it over to Dennis for a financial report.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate it. We're in good shape. We have, you know, it's early in the year yet. We have a decent budget. So we are out for a number of transportation projects are out for bid. So we will begin to spend down our professional services budget. I would think by June, we'll start spending money. It takes that long to hire people. But we're in good shape on the financial side.
Okay. How about the environmental notices or grant opportunities?
Nothing that I've seen relative to the environmental notice bulletins. If anybody has a question or wants to point one out, I don't have anything. And the same thing with respect to grant opportunities. I would say that for those communities that are looking at water and sewer infrastructure with the upcoming CFA, and usually those CFAs come out in June or July, end of June, early July, they come out. And consolidated funding application for those folks that don't know what CFA means. We're kind of anticipating that if you're looking for funding, you may have to have all of your environmental work done at the time when you submit the application, which means if you're going to submit an application for water and sewer infrastructure, you need to start now. Just be aware of that. And there were, as I recall, something in the neighborhood of 70 applications from this region for water and sewer infrastructure the last go around, and they funded in the neighborhood of 20 to 25. So it's highly competitive, and because of that, they keep upping the eligibility requirements in order to submit the application. But that's the only upcoming grant opportunity that I'm aware of.
All right, thanks, Dennis.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm sorry to ask this and sound so ignorant, but the environmental notices, what are they just for our information? I mean, what are we supposed to do or know about that?
For just information.
That's
what
correct.
We do, we pull extracts from, you can follow and get an email list of them from the ENBs from the New York State DEC. So we just pull the ones that are relevant to the county. We put them into a little report for you.
Okay,
I have a
thanks.
question about the marijuana cultivation project. They're discharging quite a lot of water into the stream, and they have their own water treatment. But I don't recall them mentioning that when they made their presentation to us. Does anybody know whether that's been tested before on another facility that they have, or there's any questions about how effective it's going to be?
So let me see if I can address at least part of that. It's to the best of my knowledge, they are not going to discharge their effluent into a stream. They will be discharging into the Napanock sewage treatment facility. And that's an ongoing discussion right now with the Napanock sewage treatment plant and the operators of that facility in terms of what their discharge requirements will be. The thought being is they may or may not have to do pre-treatment prior to that discharge. And that's typical for industrial facilities of this nature, that communities can require pre-treatment if needed. And it usually it's because of what they call biological oxygen demand loading. We're aware of the fact that that's out there. There's been some discussion. A letter was written from I believe it was the Riverkeeper expressing some concerns about that discharge. The planning board staff had in its possession, when we looked at the Cresco project, a letter from the town indicating that they had enough sewer capacity and that they had enough water capacity. So we had that in the files that they submitted to us.
Okay, so what I read about them discharging, I think, into the Wallkill River, that's not going to happen.
Oh, well, maybe we're talking about two different
That was on the
projects. The project
environmental document that you had sent out, that Rob sent out with everything else.
was on the environmental notice bulletins.
Yes.
Okay, we're talking about two separate projects. I'm talking about the
Yeah,
project.
that
in
wouldn't be,
Falls.
that wouldn't be the one in Warsing, because that's not
That's for
anywhere near
sure.
the Wallkill. That's the
Maybe I have,
Rondout.
I might have the name of the stream wrong.
Okay.
Definitely
There
possible.
was
Yeah.
on the MB, there was a neg declaration for the
Mhm.
for Cresco.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that, I think if we're referring to the same one, then it is not the Walk Hill, it is it would be the Rondout. And they would discharge through a sewage treatment facility.
Okay, well, that's reassuring.
I think the one you're referring to is at the New Paltz High School, and it's being discharged into an intermittent stream. I think that
Oh.
was the one that was in the environmental bulletin.
I'm trying to find it, and let me see.
I mean, most of them are discharged into streams.
Yeah, I wasn't able to tell for sure whether all these bulletins were for the same project or was different ones. So thanks for clarifying that.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay, great. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay, so I see what they're saying. Now, it says the department has something to approve the reissuance of a speedies permit for an existing surface discharge of 12,800 gallons per day of treated sanitary wastewater to an unnamed tributary to the Platte Hill from a secondary treatment plant at the applicant's facility address in the town of New Paltz. But it looks like the same project.
yeah, that would be, those are common, and that's a renewal of a permit. So those are literally common, that they go back through and they renew the permits. The only thing that usually changes on those renewals is they could change some of the effluent parameters that could be released. So that's an existing discharge that's occurring. They're just renewing the permit for that discharge.
For an existing project or an existing?
Yes, it's an existing discharge.
Oh,
So it's not related to new construction.
oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything on the communications, Dennis?
Nothing from my perspective, if anybody has any questions about them.
All right. And how about
The only, let me mention one thing, and that's the Woodstock Artists Association, that the Parks and Recreation has indicated that that's going to be eligible for nomination for the register, just so you know.
Good.
That's the only thing on that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, Dennis, how about the director's report?
So we're currently, I think the most important thing to talk about is where we are in housing. So just let me give you an update on housing. One is that on the staff position, we're currently going through resumes right now. We have, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 8 or 9 resumes. And we have at least 3 to 4 of those which are certainly eligible, and we'll be working to schedule interviews. Staff is working together on making sure that we have we're all in agreement about who we should interview. And so far, we have consensus. So we're trying to look to try to get our staff, our senior housing senior planner focused on housing on board no later than May. So that's where we're headed on that. The second piece of that is that on the housing side is we received an $800,000 grant for housing rehab. That grant application is through the Office of Community Renewal, and it's being implemented by RUPCO. Those 2 contracts are moving through the legislature, have moved through the legislature, and we're in the process of executing those contracts right now, and that work should begin very shortly. We're currently wrapping up a housing homeownership contract with RUPCO in the state for about, I believe that one is about $490,000. We have 2 closings that have taken place, and a third closing that we would hope to take place, but it didn't because of bank issues and attorneys issues. So the contract ran out on the 28th. So we'll be returning somewhere in the neighborhood of about between $60,000 and $70,000 to the state, because we were hoping that we could make that closing, but we weren't able to. We're starting up a new housing homeownership program. That is another Office of Community Renewal contract. And that's about 600,000, I'm sorry. And that we're going to use that money to finish off the person that's gone through all the vetting process under the other grant. But just be aware of the fact that, when you start thinking about this and somebody starts saying that, what are we doing about housing? That effectively there's 800,000 in one bucket, another 500,000 in the other bucket, and another 600,000 in another bucket that we've been implementing over the last 2 years with respect to housing. Just be aware of that. The other thing with regard to housing is the Penrose project continues to move forward on Golden Hill. They are in front of the city planning board in March, and hopefully we'll be able to finish the city planning board process by April, although I'm a little bit skeptical that they will get a seeker determination by that time. But the point being is that that's where they're trying to head so that they can meet some deadlines to get their funding application in. The county is committed $2 million to provide water and sewer to a Quality Inn project for supportive housing, for permanent supportive housing in the town of Ulster. And that's for water and sewer out to that site. That committal has gone through the legislature, so contracts are now being formulated. The other one that's out there is the legislature is currently considering a $700,000 request to purchase Elizabeth Manor in the city of Kingston. And that would be used for supportive housing it would be temporary supportive housing because we're just basically running out of spaces to put people in terms of hotels and motels that are available to us. That will go through housing rehab work. That money has gone through the committee structure and will go to the floor of the legislature this month. So that's an overview of where we are on the housing. There are other things that are happening behind the scenes with respect to housing, but that's where we are in terms of housing right now. On the transportation side, the Transportation Council has adopted a unified planning work program that has $1 million of approximately $950,000 in federal money to essentially support transportation planning activities in the county. Some of that goes to support 2 of the planners in the office, but there is a substantial amount of that money that is being targeted towards studies, planning studies. in the Unified Planning Work Program. I would urge board members to go online, visit the Transportation Council's website, and take a look at that Unified Planning Work Program, as well as the other activities that are out there from the Transportation Council. We have moved all of our studies out of PDFs and written reports into what they call ARC Hub and ARC Storyboard. So when you start looking at our new studies as they come out, you're going to see them in an online format that is completely different than what you would normally see, where you download PDFs of reports and they become static. If anyone wants to see what an ARC Hub, ARC Storyboard website looks like, and how it can be used in terms of putting together reports and presenting data, take a look at Orange County is in the process of updating its open space plan, and that open space plan update is being done in ARC Hub and ARC Storyboard. So we have 3 studies right now that we are in contract with that will do that. That will be developed in ARC Hub and ARC Storyboard. I know if Bert is on, we want to announce the fact that on March 1st, we begin the Ag Addition program. The flyers are out. If anyone gets calls from farmers relative to wanting to join an ag district, please direct them to Bert at this office. There is online materials that they can work with. They should talk to Bert in filling them out and making sure that they get all of the things that they need together so that the application is complete and we can review it from the Farmland Protection Board status. That deadline closes the 31st of March. Bert, did I miss anything?
The 30th. It closes
The 30th. I'm sorry, you're right. It's 30 days. That's correct. It's 30 days. That's correct. Thanks, Bert. So other than that, there's other stuff going on within the department on a number of capital projects that we're working on. We anticipate that we'll finally complete the Midtown Linear Park by June. If the steel comes in for the stairs, we're trying to make sure that we can go out to bid on the Kingston Rail Trail this spring or early summer. We're in what they call PS&E, which is plan specifications and engineers estimates, in front of the department right now, waiting for an opportunity to allow us to go to bid. We are working towards bidding a veteran cemetery in New Paltz. The legislature is considering those resolutions this month. So we would, and then we're also under construction for a tower site in Saugerties, which we've talked to you about at Quarry Street. That construction and shop drawings and everything else is going through the county's review process right now. The bids have been awarded. We would anticipate that we can complete that by late fall of next year, given some of the time constraints in terms of deliveries. And we're currently operating and looking for a number of tower sites in the Shandaken area. And we're in the process of choosing a consultant for tower sites associated with Tonchi Mountain.
Okay.
That's my report.
Dennis, I have 2 questions for you, quick ones. Do you have a timetable as to when occupancy can happen in the Quality Inn on 28? And also, do you have an update on the new 911 center?
I don't have a time frame for occupancy on the Quality Inn. I know that they've gone through due diligence. I know that they're moving towards acquisition, but I don't want to give you an occupancy rate. But I would say it's at least 18 months away at a minimum, given what we know in terms of construction. The 911 center is still going through site selection process, and as soon as we have a site selected, we will go to the legislature and seek the necessary changes to the capital program and the capital project to essentially effectuate that design work on that site. And if we have to purchase a site, then we would move to purchase the site. But we're still going through site selection process right now.
Thank you.
Okay, Dennis, I just have a quick question. The three chunks of money you mentioned at the beginning of your report. What is that money, the 800,000, the 600,000, 500,000, what does that actually go to do for housing?
It's a community development block grant funds. It's 100% federal money. And so on the housing rehab side, what we end up doing is we work with low and moderate income homeowners, and we provide financing we provide the necessary improvements to those homes so that they can meet code and are livable. So those include major system improvements such as roofs, heating systems. It also includes handicapped access and a few others. Bert, did I miss anything?
Okay.
No, that for the rehab, yeah, that captures it all. With the home
Right.
ownership, the money is used to provide down payment assistance and closing cost assistance, to help leverage the purchase of a home. And then there's a component for post-closing rehab, which does all the same items that Dennis had mentioned, just for a purely rehab project.
Okay.
So these are for low and moderate income folks. They have to meet the low and moderate income eligibility, and that a lot of that depends on family size. And then in addition, the county does take a lien on the property, so that you can't essentially present yourself as a low and moderate income homeowner and then turn around and sell the house after we do the necessary improvements, or we provide you the money to buy it. So generally it's a zero interest 5-year loan. Then it goes down to 20% per year. It can go longer than 5 years depending upon the amount of money we expend relative to do the necessary work on the house. They're typically capped at around $30,000 to $40,000 is the typical cap.
The cap is going up, though. We had to make
Yeah,
exceptions.
it is. Yep.
The inflation is just been short of like ridiculous. I guess that's the
Yes.
word.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Dennis. Do you have a special topic discussion tonight?
Dennis, I have one more question. What exactly are they doing in the vet cemetery in New Paltz? Expanding it? Because there's an existing.
That's a great question. That's a great question, Jared. Thank you so much for that question. We currently rent, first of all, it's located on Plains Road. And it's owned by the New Paltz Rural Cemetery Association. We currently rent a portion of that cemetery that essentially is utilized solely for veterans burials. It's not the best situation. And it intermixes in the veterans burials are in somewhat close proximity to other burials. And it creates some issues for us maintaining them. And the real key is it's full. The section that we currently bury veterans in is scheduled to be almost completely full by the end of this year. The county identified lands that the New Paltz Rural Cemetery owned adjacent to the site, adjacent to their existing cemetery, which they bought for cemetery purposes, as the ability to expand and provide an exclusive area for veterans to be built that would be more in keeping with honoring the veterans themselves, and also providing an opportunity for the New Paltz Rural Cemetery Association to continue to enjoy the revenue from the county, from the veterans burials. The site is about 5 acres. It's a little over 5 acres in terms of what we're taking, but the actual burial area is about 5 acres. It's divided into areas that will be used for columbaria, which is basically burial niches, and traditional burials, as well as in-ground niches. The thought being is that we will have enough capacity at this location to essentially last for 100 years. The county is taking the easement over the site, and the county would then invest in owning the improvements, but essentially not owning the land or the cemetery or managing the cemetery. So the cemetery would still be controlled and managed by the New Paltz Rural Cemetery Association. It's quite a difference compared to where we are now. And we hope that we can continue to move this forward. We have the support of, I think, just about every legislator that I know have supported the project. And we're looking forward to getting this off the ground. And the design was heavily influenced by a committee that was formed of veterans to look at the design and what they wanted to see. It's a very formal design, but it does use some of the elements from the Shanga Mountains, which are in the backdrop of the cemetery in terms of its design, ethic. Does that help, Jer?
Will the existing intern veterans be moved?
No, absolutely not. They will not. That area will be continued to maintained by the county, and it will be continued to be maintained in a fashion that is similar to the fashion that we have relative to the new burial plots.
Thank you.
Great, good information.
Drew, Mike Baden,
Yes.
I just had a quick question for Dennis or for anybody else. Dennis, we have a National Register schoolhouse in our town that is in need of some structural work. Is anybody aware, and maybe Mr. Hanson knows, of any funding opportunities that are out there right now for historic structure rehab?
There is not a lot out there right now. It's all
That's
basically
what I was,
yeah.
yeah, that's what I was finding myself, is that there's not a lot out there, so.
There would be stuff out there relative to rehabbing the building in terms of its heating and cooling systems, Mike. So NYSERDA would
Okay.
have, there's not a lot of money in NYSERDA grants, but they are out there for that.
Yeah, we're looking for, foundation work and things like that and drainage, so we can maintain the foundation and things like that. So I'll probably wait till the CFAs come out. Hopefully there'll be something in there we can use. So. Okay, thank you.
Good. All right, Dennis, thank you. How about the special topic discussion?
I think we've covered them in sort of the overview of what the department is doing. So I don't want to repeat myself, but the housing work and the trails work would generally come under special topics, and I apologize to the board. I think I've covered them in that general discussion in terms of what the board is doing.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Robert, do we have anybody in the public that wants to speak?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
How are you? I guess you can't see me. This is Phil Erner here. And Dennis, you and I were just on the other committee meeting, and I came here late, but I just had a quick question since you mentioned the linear park in Midtown, and I put it in the chat too. But so I'm wondering, I understand what has held that up. But projects like that and like Broadway, which is not a county thing, that was a city thing. But in general, I feel frustrated as someone who gets around on a bike and on foot to see those end up taking longer than getting the cars moving. And I'm not accusing the county of that in this case, but I'm just wondering if we can make the argument that this is a matter of public safety or traffic safety to somehow get around whatever limitations we have, because if that park's open, then a lot more people don't have to walk on busy streets to go between the plaza and Midtown. And similarly for bike lanes, if we're having any roadway that you have shared use like that, just getting the non-motor part of it open as quickly as possible for safety reasons, really.
Phil, I completely agree. And if I may take the board's time a little bit, the difficulty with respect to the Midtown Linear Park is we were scheduled to finish in November, and the contractor was on schedule to finish that particular time frame. The difficulty has been the COVID pandemic has literally just completely disrupted supply lines, and they literally can't get the steel to build the staircases. So for all intents and purposes, I think there's a little bit of paving to do once the staircases go in, because we didn't want to pave and have the work on the staircases just mar the pavement. And so with that, once that's completed, the trail will open, and we're literally waiting for steel to come in, and they're ready to start as soon as the steel comes in, and we're ready to go. So it's nothing but essentially supply chain issues is holding that up right now. We haven't had we didn't close the trail, but we haven't had an opening of the trail. And the reason we didn't advertise an opening of the trail is until the project is completed, technically the project remains in the hands of the contractor. So the contractor did not block the trail off, but we basically had a conversation and said people can use it, but effectively what we didn't want to do is have an opening of the trail and relieve the contractor of his responsibilities under the contract. So that's where we are. The extension lasts till the middle of June, and they've indicated to us, and we've been in contact with them, that as soon as the steel comes in, they will start.
All right. Is there any other public that wants to speak?
Nope, doesn't look like it.
All right, then let's go to our zoning referrals. The first one up is Gardner. Are there any recusals? Okay, Robert, all yours.
Rob, you're muted.
You're seeing my PowerPoint, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, Garner Visitor Center is Tuttle Town in, and it's a visitor center expansion. Let me go to aerial real quick. So this is Tuttle Hill Town off 4455. You'll see the project we reviewed the last couple of years under construction, since we have 2021 air photos now. So the expansion is of this building here. Let me annotate. So the reason for the expansion is actually kind of COVID related. They were unable to use their tasting room as much because they weren't able to have the separation that they needed to keep it open. So what they're doing is expanding it by, it's a 3,800 square foot expansion, but in reality, it's 20, basically an additional 20 seats is what it is. Let me clear my annotation. There we go. So they're updating the landscaping. The parking meets the zoning statute. They are installing some EV charging stations for sustainability purposes. And like I said, it's basically expanding the use by 20 seats for seating. Do have a letter from SHPO, and that, which is the one concern, and I'll come back to that. So here's your site plan. Like I said, buildings being expanded here. Lighting levels are all in keeping with county recommendations, i.e. standards, dark sky compliant. There's stormwater work, there's permeable pavers out here for the landscaping for a patio area. The one comment from SHPO has to deal with the historic nature of the property, because you have the old sluiceway here, and they just wanted to make sure that there were no architectural changes to that and that it was preserved with respect to that. So we wanted to also staff wanted to make a comment and make sure that was followed as a required modification. This is what it's going to look like. The light gray is the expansion. So just that one protection of the architectural and archaeological resources, namely the sluiceway in particular.
Move to accept county recommendations. Vivian?
Second, Mike Baden.
All right, good. Any further discussion?
Robert, I have
Rob,
questions.
any comments on the, on solar for that new building or not?
I didn't see any. I mean, we could add the sustainability comment to it, just we certainly can. We have it in the past.
Are they planning to do events here?
Excuse me?
Are they planning to do events?
Not that I'm aware of. That was just, like I said, their purpose, their narrative basically focused on creating more seating so that they could actually create more space for their patrons. That was the purpose for it.
Rob, this
They
is
are
Glenn.
adding,
Just for people that don't know, they have a fairly significant solar installation already and run most of their current operation through solar power.
Oh, there you go.
Is that up in the field, Rob?
Yes.
Let's go to Ariel.
Okay. Okay, that
Mm,
works.
yeah. Not actually seeing it here, but okay. Huh. Okay. Maybe the panels are on some of the buildings. I'm not seeing them. So,
No, they're freestanding.
huh.
Maybe they're just not in there.
Maybe it's for
Yeah, this is a 21 air photo, so they should be there.
yeah,
if they're
they
there.
should be there. I mean, I'm not seeing any freestanding panel solar here. Huh. Did they do it recently, Glenn?
No, it's been there quite a while.
Huh.
I've seen
They
it
hid them well.
recently.
Okay, it's hidden
I
in
was gonna
plain
say,
sight, apparently.
They hid them well.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
but
Any further
it
discussion?
doesn't hurt to make that comment for this new building just for its own use.
It's not a new building. It's just an expansion of an existing building.
Right, but it's a pretty significant expansion compared to what's existing, so it wouldn't hurt to have it there. And they do mention outdoor speakers, so it sounds like they may be, planning some types of events, but hasn't really been
One of
specified.
my comments too.
Okay, any other discussion?
So we're gonna make the sustainable comment advisory then, since they have EV charging stations and they have solar already, or you want to make that required mod still anyway?
I would say advisory.
Okay. Probably need
Yeah.
a new motion.
If Vivian will modify her resolution, I'll modify my second to make that advisory.
Yes, will do.
Okay, thank you, guys. All right, all those opposed? And any abstentions? All right, motion passes. All right, Robert, we'll move on to Hurley with the local law number 1. Is there any recusals from Hurley?
Mitchell Cohen from Hurley is recusing.
Okay, thanks, Mitch. Okay, Robert.
Okay, now there's a slight issue with this is that what was sent to me by the town clerk turned out to be incomplete version of the law. I called them, asked them for a complete version of the law and looked on the town's website for the law. They did not get it to me in time for the meeting. What I was able to discern from what I received didn't raise the county level impact. It's basically just to regulate uncontrolled filling or excavation of land and to ensure clean fill is used. Unless it's already before the plan board, it requires only building inspector and approval, and it speaks to fill or excavation less than 200 cubic yards over 12 months is exempt, or if it's town or any agency working for the town. So, and they have pretty stringent violations enforcement. I don't have a lot left else of the law, so what I'm going to recommend is that they, as a required mod, that they re-refer with make a full statement to us.
So move, Mike Baden.
Second it, McLaughlin.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Robert, now to town of Kingston. Uh, Any recusals on that one? Okay,
All right. Town of Kingston is proposing their local law. We have about 3 different local law number ones before us this month, so I made sure to specify what they were. So this one is the Town of Kingston short-term rental law. Generally speaking, it's very similar to what we see in the other communities. They have an annual permit that requires a safety plan, parking layout, similar 2 persons per bedroom, host contact info. So that means they are going to be allowing non-owner occupied units. And of course, they require an annual inspection. They go on again and say that they need a yearly fire safety inspection as well. They have to register with the Ulster County for the Ulster County bed tax. For the non-owner occupied units, they are allowed 180 days max, but they can only use 26 of the weekends of the year. And that includes Friday evenings and Monday mornings. So it's limited. Only the property owner can request a permit, and you can only have interest in 1 non-owner occupied STR unit. So what I would read this to be is that you could probably, as someone you could probably have an STR in an owner occupied unit, but you could probably also have interest in 1 other non-owner occupied unit. Of course, there will be an annual fee schedule that they reserve the right to establish for themselves, and the usual host to provide local laws emergent info to the people who rent them out. And the parking is 1 space per bedroom plus what's required for the principal residence. So it's a little bit different. And especially this breakdown here when they go to the definition section. So the usual definition is less than 30 days for a short-term rental, but then they divide it up into a short-term rental home and a short-term rental establishment. And they change them off based on the bedroom size. So not really seeing a reason for this. 3 and not more than 5 bedrooms in a primary dwelling or an accessory habitable structure, or 1 or 2 bedrooms maximum in a short-term home. So didn't really see the reason for as most other municipalities don't, while they might have a maximum number of bedrooms, they don't change between, if it's a house pretty much. Short-term rental, non-owner occupied. They have to have the host has to be within 10 miles and the 180-day clause. Comments. There was no move by the town to reserve a right to cap non-owner occupied units. We highly recommend that they reserve that right. There was no specific call out for a prohibition of short-term rentals and multifamily structures. They should do that. There wasn't really a specification about how many short-term rentals that you could have ongoing on a single site at a time. So we recommend that it be 1 short-term rental per lot and 1 structure. So you can't have a short-term rental going on an accessory, or if it's, if you have 5 bedrooms on site, they all have to be in 1 building. They can't be and the accessory and in the primary. And the comment I made before about the bedroom maximum, they should establish a bedroom maximum for all the occupancy types. For the non-owner occupied, they didn't establish a maximum bedroom size. So we understand what they're trying to do is probably so to avoid any illegal conversions and attics and basements and things of that nature, but they should establish one just overall for all the different types.
Rob, do they define bedroom? Because what we found in Rochester is obviously in these places, people convert areas to what we call sleeping rooms. And we, even though they're not a traditional bedroom under building code, that we allowed them subject to obviously the building inspector reviewing it and saying that it had the proper egress, things like pull-out couches in living rooms and things like that oftentimes are construed as a bedroom in this situation, but wouldn't be a traditional bedroom.
I don't recall that being there. I believe there was the definitions I listened to, I think were all of them, except for there was a definition of host. Was the only other definition I recall there being in the statute.
I don't know if we want to make that, I don't know how to word it, but just to make that either a required mod or an advisory comment that they differentiate between bedrooms and sleeping rooms, because my concern is everything is bedroom centric in their code.
Mr. Murray, you had a comment?
Yeah, just, I'm curious, maybe I missed it. Is there any signage for egress or a map of egress as part of their requirements?
I didn't see it in there, but I know I don't know if that would be required in fire safety inspection or as part of, I don't know.
I have a question. This is Vivian. In Shandaken, we're trying to work out an STR law. We're getting kind of hung up on the definition of multifamily for the purposes of the law. I recall some towns have a definition of a certain number of units becomes multifamily, like 3 units or more. Is there a recommendation that you would have for that? How to define multifamily?
Vivian, I believe that may be, and Dennis can confirm, but I believe that's New York State Building Code, and that is, I think it's 3 or more.
Okay.
Yeah,
3 or more, that's what I thought.
Typically towns follow, thank you, Mike. Typically towns follow the code.
Right.
And it is 3 or more. They don't have to, but typically they do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cohen, you have a comment?
Yeah, this is Mitchell Cohen. I'm just questioning the, so if a person owns 5 lots with, 1 house on each lot, there's no cap, right? So the required modifications is a reserve a right to cap non-owner, but what about people that are just renting short-term rentals? And because people do that, they rent and they don't really pay attention, the upkeep, maintenance, garbage, and everything else with these. Are they gonna?
I don't think I'm following you.
I think I know what he's talking about. In other words, non-owners owning more than 1 short-term rental in the town.
They can.
And I thought they covered that, Rob, as I recall.
They only have interest in 1.
Right.
Yeah, if that's, so it's covered in the code, Mitch. We didn't bring it up in the recommendations because they actually cover that.
Got it. Thank you.
So let's go back to Mike's comment. The thought being is on Mike's comment, I think maybe what we end up doing is that we, in writing this, the bedroom maximum, what we'll add to that, Mike, is, consideration should be given to how to determine what constitutes a bedroom. We'll just leave.
Yeah.
I don't want to insert myself in trying to tell them how to define it. I just want to tell them that they should think about it.
That's the gist of what I was trying to say. Yep, absolutely.
I got it. Yeah.
Would that be advisory then? Or
We'll
we
leave it right in the
recommend
bedroom
as a required
maximum.
modification that they define what constitutes a bedroom.
I think that should be a required mod to define the bedroom, not telling them how to do it, but just to define what a bedroom is.
Okay.
Since they use that word
We'll just-
throughout the code.
We got it. So the
Okay.
answer is yes.
This is Vivian again. I'm wondering what is the reasoning behind advising to recommend no more than 1 STR per lot. There are a lot of STRs that have more than 1 structure on the lot. Maybe not more than 2, but that seems unusually restrictive to me.
Well, generally speaking, we don't want them to turn into compounds or hotels. So,
Right, but
so by being in one unit, it makes it seem like it's part of the neighborhood. The second you start going to people walking back and forth in the neighborhood, it seems like a compound or a hotel.
right,
That's
I
fine.
understand, but I'm just questioning the 1 being a kind of a small number.
It's what typically we've seen, Vivian, when communities regulate these. Yeah, they give you 1. They don't give you that you can rent the house plus the barn. They give you can rent the barn if that's what you want to do, but not the house and the barn.
Mhm.
That's typically what we do. So if the board wants to say no more than 2, then that's fine.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Mr. Cohen.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion with the addition of the comment that Dennis added.
Second, Watkins.
All right, thank you.
I think
All right,
Mr. Cohen had a comment.
yes, Mitch.
I think my hand was never taken off
Oh.
as far as raising it.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion on this one?
Can we just repeat the additional advisory or the required mod that was being added to the
It's
list?
Undefined.
To define the
Defining
word
what
bedroom.
constitutes a bedroom.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Move on to Town of New Paltz, Robert.
All right.
Viking Industries.
All right. I'm going to go to Ariel first.
Wait, I'm recusing.
Okay.
On the last, on this one. I'm sorry. I forgot to ask.
Yeah, I'm recusing on Town of New Paltz.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Let me go to Ariel. Okay. South Ohioville Road.
Hey, Rob,
Yeah.
do me a favor. Just go back to Gardner. You were at the Gardner.
Okay.
All right, go to the 2013 air photos. Stay right where you are.
Huh.
There's
Oh.
where you're.
What?
There's where you're. That's what happened. That's what happened to the solar facilities. They disappeared.
They're not there.
How did they take them?
They're
down?
not there. Yeah, they must have taken them down. I couldn't find them, and then I said they got to be here. I got to be able to see them.
Okay.
But then just move on. We made the comment. I'm fine with it.
Now you see it, now
I
you
just
don't.
wanted. Yeah, it was like
It's unusual.
Glenn says he saw it. I said, well, it's got to be on the air photo.
Okay. South Ohioville Road, Viking Industries. Viking Industries, basically, it's paper manufacturing. They make boxes, really, for a lot of the apple growers in the area. And they're quite busy. And so they're proposing a substantial expansion, about 45,000 square feet.
Oh.
And it's gonna be mostly, I believe, for storage purposes. So this is the existing building. Expansion is gonna be roughly there. Let me clear that. Okay. There we go. So there we go. So storage and manufacturing, paper products, existing warehouse. No changes to the access. Only adding 10 parking spaces. There are a couple of variances that they have outstanding that will be a required modification. One is that the statute requires 23. They're not adding that much staff to the project. They're only adding 10 spaces. So, but they'll need to request a variance on that. The other variance, and I'll get to that later. I can get to that now. Let's see. So this is existing conditions. Just so you know, there's also an existing cell tower on the property. So there's a road around the back that gets connected to it. That will be there, but they're going to move it slightly as they do the expansion. The other variance that they have is they're proposing Town of New Paltz doesn't allow loading docks in the front yard. This is the front. So where you're looking now, this becomes the front yard, but they're maintaining the landscaping here. And you'll see the landscaping plan here. They'll be doing a lot of landscaping along there, and they'll be maintaining the vegetation. So it won't be visible from the road. And you have existing homes in front of the property that have existing vegetation as well. And can only work through it. That's your truck turning template. There's no encroachment on any wetlands, state or federal. Changing the access to get to this tower. There is new septics. It'll require a permit from the county health department. Lighting is all dark sky compliant, full cutoff, meets our standards. The sustainability comment will come up there. I have not seen anything that says alternative energy sources, EV charging stations for workers, things of this nature. So we'll be making a sustainability comment. Also low impact design for stormwater controls as well. Although they do at least do a lot of you see this landscaping schedule here, the larger two landscaping schedules has to do with their landscaping around bioretention areas. So they
Yeah,
are
I'm sure we have to make that comment with respect to.
the low impact
the-
design. I think they're doing it.
Yeah, I
So,
think they've taken care of that. And I just want to call the board's attention to the landscaping along the southern property line.
right. So that's new,
Down in
and
here?
also they're maintaining it. There's a note on the plan that they're
Yeah.
maintaining what's existing there.
Because there's an adjoining subdivision in here, and I think that that's a really important, the
Right.
idea that the board took some time to take a look at that.
Right. That's the lighting, like I said, full cutoff. So required modifications will be the variances I mentioned. Health Department for septic approvals and the sustainability comment, how they can better integrate some principles of sustainability into the concept.
But we do want to tell them it's a well thought out site plan. Am I correct, Rob?
Yes, we should do that too. We
Yeah.
should,
Rob,
we
is
should,
it
we
a-
should do the positives too.
Motion
a-
to approve, Roxanne.
Is it a flat roof?
You know, that's one thing I don't have. I don't actually have elevations on
The
it.
reason I'm asking is that a roof that size, as far as sustainability, really calls out for the possibility of solar on a flat roof like that with
Right.
no impediments anywhere around it in terms of trees or anything. So,
I was thinking similarly.
yeah,
When I was thinking the
Okay.
sustainability comment.
yeah. Okay, just making sure that was what you meant.
Yeah, okay,
I'll second Roxanne's.
okay. Mr. Murray, you have a comment?
Question, what's the enlargement square footage? How big?
Let me go back. I think it's
It's like
44,000
44,000. Yes.
and change. Yeah, 44,460.
They may need, I think they've got their own reservoir for firefighting there. So maybe a comment about if they're planning on enlarging that anyway.
Yeah, there was some commentary about their dry well and that they were bringing that back up, making sure that was working.
It's a great comment, though. I think we should add that. If the two people that motion would do that, I think that's a good comment that the local fire department needs. And you didn't see anything in what they sent you from the fire department? Rob?
I believe I saw comments with respect to their dry well and some fire comments, but we'll make it just to have it there. And if I find something, we can make it advisory
Okay.
or require.
Yeah, that's
modification.
pretty huge
Yeah.
enlargement.
Yes, agreed.
I would
they-
suggest we make it required, Rob, because
Yep.
if they've already addressed it, then it just doesn't matter.
Brilliant idea.
Then
Yeah.
required it is.
I'll change my second.
Yeah, I'm okay with the motion.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, all those opposed? And any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Okay, on to Village of New Paltz. Are there any recusals?
Yeah, William Murray.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Rob, are you going to handle these together or separately?
Yeah, I should. And it really is only one referral because they only sent us the law. They didn't actually send us the map. But it is technically, they're amending their statute, but they are amending their map without actually giving us a map. So we'll keep this the two numbers. But
Okay.
number one required modification is you have to send a map when you're going to do rezoning. So let's go on with this. All right. Okay, so Village of New Paltz is doing rezoning. And what they're doing is I guess they did an audit. They looked at the land use, they looked at their existing zoning, and they said these parcels here, they do not match, their land use does not match their zone. So I got a list of about 92 parcels, maybe a few more. I think they actually counted to 96. It said 92 in the referral application, but I think it was more than that. But so all these different properties are being rezoned to, so 5 parcels to the MBR, 14 to R2, 78 to B2, and 3 to R3. I went and I mapped them myself. So this is what you'll see. If you see text, that's the existing zone. So for example, B3, you see the B3, that's actually the NBR. And over in here, this is the rezone to R2. You're seeing, now you'll see the text says R2 on a lot of them already. So I'm not exactly sure why they're rezoning them when they're, looks like based on the parcel data I have that there are already R2 in some cases. But in other cases, you see on the map to the right, that's near Village Hall. There are, for example, there are 4 single family homes here that have been single family homes for a long time that are all currently zone B1. So that makes a lot of sense to rezone to residential. These ones are R1, but they're rezoned to R3. They're next to a multifamily. So I guess that's doing that. And all these B1 parcels along 299 Main Street to B2, and all the rest of these are to B2. This one here, there are a couple missing teeth. So I'll just make a comment back to the village saying it looks like you missed a few. But the one thing that is consistent about these is they didn't just pick out parcels and say, oh, so there's not the concern necessarily that, hey, you're rezoning non-conforming uses to be conforming, but they're actually broad areas. So there are a couple of teeth missing here. This is 208 just south of the intersection. So this is all the B1 to B2. And even further south is, these are all R2, but they're all actually businesses that are rezoning to B2. Now,
Rob, what's the difference between B1 and B2 in their code? I'm just not familiar with it.
I'd have, let me, I meant to check it. I forget whether it's up zoning or down zoning.
Okay.
Maybe, Mr. Murray is probably recused, so so I can't answer that question. But yeah. So
Let me see if I can get you an answer.
yeah, give me an answer while I go through these required mods. So number 1 required modification is provide a map, updated map, send the GIS data to us for inclusion on the countywide zoning geodatabase and use on the parcel viewer. Local law did not have any link to the comprehensive plan. It needs to have a link to the comprehensive plan. I made a comment earlier about non-conforming uses, but I don't think that's going to be a case, because when I first got the list of numbers, I wasn't sure where these numbers were going to be. It could be that they're rezoning a non-conforming use to a conforming zone without considering that you might not want that non-conforming use to continue. It looks like these are all pretty solid blocks. So I'm just going to remove that comment. I don't have any seeker documentation with respect to this, and the amount of acreage that's there, that could add up to a type 1 action. Given the number of parcels that are there, that could add up to, that could cross that threshold. So they really want to complete their seeker work with respect to that. And given that we don't have a map, that we don't have seeker work, and that there's no link to the comprehensive plan that really explains it all, that we should really get this back again.
So move, Mike Baden.
Second.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion?
Who seconded that?
So,
Roxanne.
Mike, I have an answer for you, Mike.
Okay.
The B1 zoning district was repealed in 11/10/2021.
That's
So
a fine answer.
So
It does no longer
There you go.
exists. That makes
There you go.
sense.
We got to move it somewhere. Huh?
So the thought being is that this really makes a lot of sense now, because absent that, they're really finding themselves in a situation where they don't have anything that it's zone nothing. So
Right.
this is something we should congratulating them on picking up and going to, at least the B2 zoning makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, thank you for looking that up.
Well, there you go. Who seconded that?
Roxanne.
Nah, thank you.
Dennis, you're our research person tonight.
Yeah.
Now this week, you know.
So Rob, I'm not quite clear on one thing. When you say refer the link to the comprehensive plan, are you saying they need some kind of justification in the comprehensive plan?
Usually in your
to do it?
purpose, when you do a rezoning, you, as part of your law, say we're rezoning this for a reason that comes from a strong basis within our comprehensive plan. Now, if they say that it's been a while since the Village of New Paltz has had a comprehensive plan, but I'm sure they could craft one.
In this case, Rob, given that the B1 doesn't exist anymore, they might not
Maybe.
need that referral anymore because in
Right.
essence, Dennis is right. Right now, they're not zoned at all.
Yes, so.
So if somebody were to apply, they would probably have a legitimate ability that they could do whatever they wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, there's your compliance right there. It's like two codes so that they actually can conform to the zoning statute.
Yeah.
But I would wonder what was the reason for them repealing the B1 in the first place? And that still doesn't say what the change is from B1 to B2, but the previous B1, how is B2 now different?
Well, let me just say that when you read the definition of what B1 is, B2 is for, excuse me, it's the core business district of the village. So the thought, I can't get inside their head because I don't have a map that shows the B1 district in its totality. But the thought being is probably they had these two business districts, and they really wanted to make sure that what they were doing is putting together a map that showed this is a core business area within the district. And I suspect that the B2 is probably actually more is an upzone from the B1, given it's a core business district.
Right. And I'm also assuming that when they repealed B1, they didn't refer it to the county planning board at the time. Oh,
We don't recall seeing it.
I wouldn't assume that.
yeah.
I'd have to. It's been a while, so I've had to look at that.
All right. So any further discussion? Okay, all those opposed? And any abstentions? All right, so move. That's for both of them, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
Very good. Okay, now we're on to Plattekill with the Newburgh fuel distribution. Any recusals for Plattekill? All right. Okay, Robert.
All right. So let me go to Ariel first. I think you may be more familiar with it from the air. So you have Plattekill Ardonia Road, and then you have Huckleberry Turnpike, and you have, this is basically the what was it? The existing main store here. And you have also on the site, right next to it, this is a historic cemetery that dates back to the 18th century.
Wow.
I think I saw 1793 was the date. What I saw. So what they want to do though, is they're requesting multiple variances. I'm going to go back. So we don't have this for site plan yet. So lot area, front yard, rear yard, and parking variances. And they're going to be knocking down the existing structure, the old convenience store, country store, for a new 2,185 square foot convenience store. And they're also going to be installing a canopy fuel station on the property, or proposing to. So you can see I brought in the bulk requirements. They have less than half the lot area that's required. They have more than enough width. They have depth. Their front yard is lacking substantially. Side yard is lacking. Side yard, they have side yard. And the rear yard is lacking there. Okay, moving on. So this is existing conditions. This just shows the gray area. That's where they're going to be knocking down the existing structure. And this is the proposal. So you have, where are you? There we go. New structure. And this would be the canopy. And it's almost right against the cemetery where you have a stone wall in place. And also keep in mind you have a narrow site. So you have two different points of access from Huckleberry Turnpike and from Playa-Caledonia Road. So you have a state route nearby and you have county routes nearby. So number of concerns are, one, it was sent to us with seeker, but number one issue is lack of a coordinated review with respect to this, because you have issues with respect to stormwater, especially considering it is a hotspot as a fuel station, and especially so given the proximity to a historic grave site. It's going to be essentially right up next to it, blocking views of this historic use. And this is just a further zoom in on it. That's the existing site. You can see the graveyard over here. You can see some of the stone wall here. So, require mods. One, coordinated review with the planning board. And they should take a special concern. They should have stormwater data, given that it's a hotspot, as part of the review of the variance, and make sure they're also coordinating with the county DPW for stormwater into, and this is part of the planning board review, but stormwater and runoff into the county system right away. And they also need to really take a hard look with SHPO and look at impacts on the historic next site. And then they really need to take a real hard look when they're doing their balancing test with respect to the variance, which again, community character comes into play with proximity to the graveyard, historic nature, and the significance of the variance request. I mean, you have a canopy that's essentially abutting the historic use.
Rob, with coordinated review, would DOT be involved? I know it's not off of 32, but it's such close proximity, it might be close enough that they're involved as well.
Well, certainly DPW is involved, Mike,
Yes.
and the real concern
passed it
here
on
is
to
that,
DPW.
yeah, we passed it on, and there's multiple access points to the county road right off of 32, and we would have some concern about that, so.
Yeah.
Can you go
Just
back and
didn't-
show the overview again of where the canopy is going to be and where the entrance and exits are?
Sure.
Sure.
So state route, county route, access to this portion of parking lot, access to here. During site plan review, we would make comments about truck turning, fire, and you have full access movements at both entrances. That would be a no from staff.
Yeah, I just brought it up in terms of seeker with the
Right.
coordinated review, because they should be initiating that if they're the first agency to review this, so.
How is
I mean, it's not,
the,
it's not,
how
it's
is
not a
the-
required coordinated review. I'm sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
that's okay. How is the graveyard accessed? Where's the entrance to the graveyard?
That was my question.
It's off in the back.
Let me go to Ariel. I'll show it to you.
Dennis,
might
to
not-
your question, to your statement though, wouldn't this, I would think this qualified as a type 1, which made it a mandatory
totally.
coordinated review.
Access to a graveyard looks like it comes through in here.
I went to the CBA meeting last week and I did ask the engineer a few questions afterwards, because I had a lot of concerns here too. I don't know how the ZBA did it, but they put it down on the application or the referral sheet as a type 2 action. I didn't see in their minutes where they reviewed the seeker at all. The planning board had sent it to them, but the planning board had taken no action on it. They said they could go to the ZBA first, evidently. And the lawyer's letter said it was a type 2 action, and whether they took that as meaning as a type 2 or not, I don't know. But I think that was an error on somebody's part, but on uncoordinated review, maybe type 2 for the CBA. But
So let me
And I also,
Let me just
Dennis,
think of-
about 10 years ago, we came up for a gateway meeting for the same location.
Yeah, I remember.
And there was one point you brought up about on that such a small thing, the stormwater runoff would need a special type of filtering.
Yeah.
Well,
Possibly.
let me
I
just
mentioned that to him, and they said I mentioned that to the engineer. He said he doesn't have to do any of that. This is under 1 acre disturbance, so there's nothing he has to do. Instead of getting in a big argument with it, I kind of let it go. But there's a lot of issues here. Along the cemetery, they're planning on the where the gas pumps would be a 4-foot retaining wall. Yet they don't have show any detail of how far back they're toward the cemetery they need to dig out to put the backfill for that retaining wall in for, which should be done. And a lot of the access to the cemetery now has been up from that parking area into there. And if they're going to put a fence up along that, and they said they would have some steps there and possibly allow somebody, and I said they need to have equipment placed, and they said they could come off of Huckleberry. Also, they did send a sheet up to the review with the truck turning points, and one of the ZBA members did bring up, who was used to trucks, noticed that their fuel truck that they had showed was a 42-foot trailer, and he thought trailers could be longer, and also the cab or the tractor pulling it was a cab over, which cab overs are not being used, so they wanted to have that looked into to be new turning. So don't go by those turning radiuses they give you.
So let me see if I can address a couple of issues that were raised by the board. One is that is it a type 1 or an unlisted action, or type 1, type 2 or unlisted action? I'm not aware of any special dispensation for convenience stores or gas stations when it comes to the size of the structure. And everybody should remember that any structure less than 4,000 square feet is a type 2 action. So I would not say that anyone's wrong by calling this thing a type 2 action. And our need for a coordinated review is not necessarily based on the seeker document. It's based on the coordinated review between a planning board and a zoning board of appeals in terms of issuing the variances. That's the key in my mind. So that's the first thing. With regard to stormwater, the stormwater issue here is that it's got to go somewhere, right? And the fact that you're going through and going through all of this work, it means effectively that if the way it currently looks like, you're going to have to find a way to get it out into either off the property into the county's drainage structures or somewhere on your property. So the comment on stormwater is not so much in terms of SWIPs or anything else, or the fact that you don't meet the acreage disturbance. The comment on stormwater is effectively, well, where is it going? You know, and for that, even though you're doing variances, you need to understand where the heck the stormwater is going. The other thing that Rob mentioned is this is a hot spot. One of the things that we don't want to have happen is gasoline spills or other kinds of spills ending up in a county roadway. So the thought being is even if what you need to tell us in some way, shape, or form as part of the variance crest in terms of what we're doing with respect to the stormwater. So that I think that sort of addresses what we're trying to do. And I wouldn't pin this back on the seeker documents because I'm not sure who's right with respect to seeker. I would suspect that the applicant's attorney is saying, but my building is less than 4,000 square feet, therefore I'm an exempt type 2 action. That doesn't mean that the planning and zoning board of appeals can't go through and consider these things.
Actually,
the other
Dennis,
thing is the adjacent. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, you are correct, because you reminded me of a situation we had in Rochester that we went to the state and we got advisement. If something qualifies as both a type 2 and a type 1, you can't get to the type 1 list unless it doesn't qualify as a type 2. The first order is you check if it qualifies as a type 2, you're done. And as soon as it qualifies as a type 2, no further action is necessary. But that would be for this part of the project, not necessarily the site plan, but
Well, and that's the thing is we don't have to rely on seeker. We can rely on the town's zoning code to do what it needs to do with respect to adequate drainage, adequate access, the necessary character of the community. All of those things go through the community's discussion without relying on seeker. And that's kind of where we were thinking we would write this. It certainly doesn't involve, it doesn't absolve them from the SHPO discussion. Not being subject to seeker does not absolve you from essentially some sort of coordination with respect to the State Historic Preservation Office.
And
so that explains what.
Go ahead.
No, I'm fine.
And I'm just thinking with the hotspot in regard to the cemetery, if how do you prevent a potential leak from getting into the grave sites? And if you had to do remediation,
So that's basically that's a closed cemetery anymore.
yeah, but still,
So I mean, as far as getting into the grave sites, there's.
I'm talking
I guess some of those
remediation.
graves aren't that deep, but the other thing, Dennis, too, is I don't know if this matters for the seeker or not. Is that this is in that Chadwick Lake watershed or the Passaic Creek, which
It's another
Chadwick Lake.
It's another reason to have that discussion about a hotspot. But anyway, the point being, Rod, can you go back to your recommendations? So the coordinated review discussion is not related to seeker. It's related to the coordinated review between the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, so that you don't end up with variances and differences, and everybody understands who's doing what. And the thought being is that you need a much more developed site plan in order to start making decisions with respect to the variance. That's the thought here with respect to that. And the balancing test has to do with some of the things you have to do with SHPO and some of the things that the planning board and the zoning board of appeals have to consider with respect to area variances, which is community character. So all of those come together in terms of what the design of the facility looks like, what the design of the canopy looks like, what the lighting is associated with the pumps. All of those things should come into discussion given the proximity to this graveyard. And then last but not least is some of the questions with respect to access. And of real concern to me is people actually parking on the road. If you look at if you remember Rob's, if you look at this area, I'm sorry, Rob, I want to see if I can annotate. I apologize. I'm not sure whether I can or not.
You should be able to.
So if you look
right
at
here.
this area over here is all gravel, right? And so if you don't want to go, if you want to stop at your convenience store, what ends up happening is, it used to be in the past, people would stop here and walk across because, and when rather than use this, and you get trucks in with they're hauling stuff, and other people, they stop in here. And that's the other question that comes out. And right over here in this area over here is the post office. So there's a lot of activity in here, and that's to start to think about.
I also brought up to the engineer, which wasn't on this, is where the other delivery trucks would be going. Because I said they cannot park out along Plattekill Ardonia to carry their goods in. And he said, oh no, they wouldn't ever do that. But he said that he could make that parking lot bigger up in the back on Huckleberry so that they could turn in there and back up to the door, which doesn't make much sense, but that will be at the site plan time.
Right.
But I am concerned about trucks parking along Plattekill Ardonia, given the intersection there with the old Firehouse Road and Huckleberry, and also with 32 there, cars coming off of 32, and the cars coming out of this, queuing on to 32, you've got short distances or short queuing space.
So let's go back to Rob's recommendations.
Dennis,
And
Mitchell's had his hand up for a while there, so.
I'm sorry, I can't. I apologize, Mitch.
It's okay. This is Mitchell. I'm just, I'm not familiar with the county's requirements and or the town of Platicille's requirements for constructing new commercial structures next to a historic site. Is there a distance requirement for that? Not the mart, but the actual part where the overhang's going to be.
Not that I'm aware of. There's nothing special in the statute that says that if you're next to a historic site, you would have to have a greater setback. Not that I'm aware of, Mitchell.
The only historic site, designated historic site in Plattekill is up in Medina. And there's nothing there. And I also brought up about that building needs to be checked out with SHPO, and he says, the engineer said it was got a little bit testy with me, saying there was nothing on the SHPO site saying that, so they don't have to do that. So I figured somebody else has to say it other than myself.
So
The one
I
thing
just want to
about
go through
SHPO though is it doesn't have to be on the register. It just has to be eligible for a register and it still qualifies. So
I couldn't get into that.
So
Dennis,
the required
Dennis, I didn't-
modifications here is list. Go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry.
Just one quick question. I'm sorry I have to ask the stupid question. What do you mean by hotspot?
What they refer to things that have potential for petroleum leaks as hotspots.
Okay.
So,
There's a hazardous spill possibility.
Okay.
yeah.
This is Vivian. I just want to clarify, other than the canopy and the mini mart, what is the paving of the rest of the area going to be? I'm seeing two structures in the plan. Am I right? The two structures, the mini mart on the corner and the canopy with the gas pumps, and the rest is just drivable paved type area. But is that going to be gravel or black?
I don't have that detail yet, but this isn't the full, I don't have full.
This is why we do a coordinated review.
I don't have full site plans.
So all we're looking at is area variances, and we haven't seen a full site plan. So that's what they sent us. And that's why we're kind of saying you need to go back and do a little bit more work here so we can understand this. And that's why, Rob, that's what the recommendation here is, to go back and do a coordinated review with the planning board and get these details before you start issuing variances.
Will that come back to us when that's done?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Good.
Do we have a motion on this?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
well, Dennis, in terms of the variance, Rob, can you go back to the first slide you showed that showed what was being proposed in the provided. So that's a substantial variance for a lot area and a substantial variance for front yard and rear yard. And I think based on variance, one of the comments we should make is that the variance is supposed to be the least amount possible, whereas I would say this is the most amount possible. I mean, we don't have to approve a building of this size just because they want one this size. And I think it's important to make that comment that the ZBA should consider that part of the variance test as what is the least amount necessary to do the project, as opposed to this is what they want.
So let's go back to Rob's recommendations, and there was a balancing test in there. And what we can add is that the substantiality of the variances.
Right.
Is that,
the substantiality, I would
okay?
have made that comment about granting the lease.
Okay.
That's a common thing we say in back in our referrals like that.
Okay.
So in there, we'll just add it here that the balancing test should recognize the fact that these are substantial variances. Does that
We should grant the lease.
address your comment, Mike?
Necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think, because
Okay.
we're kind of sidetracking a little into site plan stuff, but the variance request is, I mean, they're kind of working backwards. They're approving the variance before they've got an approved site plan. So.
They actually addressed the discrepancy due to the fact of the size and nature of the lot and other buildings around it. So they've actually in the narrative discussed the fact that they're
Yep.
pretty substantial variances?
Yep, they do. So I'm just wondering if there's anyone at the board level that wants to make a motion.
I'll make the motion. McLaughlin,
Thanks, Vince.
anytime.
Anybody want a second?
I'll second it.
Okay,
Cindy Lanzetta.
all right. Any further discussion or comments? Okay, all those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, Robert, we're on to Rochester. Any recusals? Okay, Robert, take it away. for
Right,
the-
this is a 2-lot subdivision. Basically, it's a reconfiguration of a previous subdivision. That's why they got to us, and part of the roadway that gets to it is through a 100-year floodplain. So that's part of the reason I think it made it to us as far as not being subject to our exception agreement. Usually a 2-lot subdivision wouldn't get to us, but it is surrounded by flood, and you have this access way here. There's no proposed construction for those lots, no county impact on this.
Motion to support, Vivian.
Wait.
Second, McLaughlin.
The drawings show proposed houses, though.
I think those were the previous design. The actual narrative says they're not going to be proposing to do anything with them.
I think they're saying they're doing the subdivision without talking about what happens next.
They do
Well,
have
it is-
they do have previously approved septic, so
Yeah, Rob, it was an approved subdivision, and because these 2 lots are part of an approved subdivision, this actually would have been a lot line adjustment, but it got classified as a major subdivision because
subdivision,
it's
right.
a change to a map subdivision.
right. Yeah, I
So
saw that.
that's the reasoning behind it.
Right.
Okay.
So
All right. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those opposed? And any abstentions? All right, good. Motion passes. Okay, we're on to Rochester Local Law number 1. I'm assuming you're going to recuse, Mike?
I will.
Okay. All right, Robert.
all right. So town of Rochester has a accessory dwelling unit statute. And I think someone's been taking notes off the Ulster County Planning Board. So it's allowed in the AR3, AB3, R1, R2, R5, H and B zones. Must be on the same parcel as the primary residential unit or allowed via an administrative permit. So there's no site plan requirement, no special permit requirement. Just goes before the building inspector, which is what we commonly recommend. For detached structures, they're saying you need an additional 50% for your density calculations. So instead of 1 acre, 1.5 acres, and it must meet the underlying setbacks. They also specifically prohibit lots that already have 2-family or multifamily on from also having an accessory structure on top of that. The principal use can't be commercial or industrial, can occur on non-conforming lots, and can't be used as STRs. Owner must occupy either a unit, which is very common, and meet the health, building code, fire code, and standards. So very in keeping with our usual recommendations. Couple advisory comments. Just a comment, just to consider more flexibility. So great that they're doing administrative review for ones that are on conforming lots, but there may be situations that arise where they might want to consider site plan review for proposals on non-conforming or undersized lots or have unique dimensional constraints. So, and that the density calculation really, if it has existing health department approvals and they can support that use, they may not need that additional
I think that-
density.
Yeah, I think the key here on this discussion was that if you're adding a single bedroom, not multiple bedrooms in the ADU, that
Yeah.
maybe you don't need a 50% increase in density, and that's It's not that there's no need for additional density restrictions,
Right.
is that it could be better nuanced. The first thing we want to check
Yes.
is that we really, really, really appreciate the fact that the town is moving away from essentially requiring permits for additional
Yes.
dwelling units, and the breadth in which they're allowing them to occur, and the restrictions they're putting on with respect to short-term rentals, et cetera. We really want to congratulate the town on this. This is probably a great model for a community to follow with respect to how to deal with accessory dwelling units in a housing crisis.
And it's all just, there's no need for additional density restriction refers to if it's like a 1-bedroom apartment.
Okay, motion McCarthy.
Second,
So are you going to modify that particular bullet?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks. Thank you.
And they're all advisory anyway.
I just have a question. How do you, like if they build it and, let's say 10 years from now, it's changed hands, whatever, and somebody wants to use it for a short-term rental, what is there to protect that from happening?
Be a building inspector violation.
It's
I mean,
part of the approval.
somebody would have to report it.
Yeah.
You know,
So this would be for forever with the property.
That's correct.
It's on the deed.
No, it would be a part of the zoning. It's not a deed.
Okay,
I guess it'd be part of the permit
And it's
acknowledging.
and
you've
it's
got
not
probably some
forever
sort of
because the
acknowledgement
town-
on the permit that says you will not
The
use this
town
as
could
a
allow it
dwelling
in the future if it decides to change its mind, but so it's not necessarily forever. It would just be that this was constructed with the following restrictions associated with it. And the title companies would pick it up and the building inspectors would pick it up. You can't use it for short-term rentals. Am I saying it's foolproof? No, but it is a restriction that the town could enforce.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Vivian. Is this only referring to new construction and not existing accessory dwelling units?
Well, the short answer is yes, but new construction, when you say new construction, it doesn't have to be a new house. It could be an existing house that essentially wants
conversion
to
of
put an
existing structure,
accessory dwelling
expansion of
unit in.
structure, or internal conversion. If it's a new accessory dwelling, wherever it is, it would apply.
So, okay. And the other question is, what would be the reason for prohibiting an accessory dwelling unit on a lot utilized for 2-family or multifamily? Wouldn't we want to encourage more housing?
The thought being is they wouldn't be accessory.
They would
already
be
2
considered
units
units
there.
of the multifamily, even if they're
Same thing with
freestanding?
multifamily.
Okay, so even if they're freestanding and not part of the existing structure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got your density bonuses with respect to multifamily or 2 dwelling or two units per lot. That's the thought. You know, I wouldn't fault them on that.
I just didn't understand it. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the discussions that's been occurring in my town relative to accessory apartments is whose responsibility is it to verify that the septic system can actually handle the additional load? And that gets kind of complicated when you're dealing with houses that are relatively old, 30, 40 years old. But no comment relative to
I
this.
think
Go ahead.
the short answer is that for new construction, it's simple. As for
Yes.
older construction, it depends upon the size of the tank relative to the number of bedrooms. That's all. I mean, we've
Right.
had this conversation with the health department.
Right, but it sounded like from what discussions I was hearing is the health department didn't really want to get involved in existing systems and what's there and what's not there and whether it can take more load or not. And so now it becomes a question of how do you actually verify that? And it becomes more important when you're in the watershed too.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do dye tests.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was just making the comment. Anyway, okay, do we have a motion? I think we do, yes. Any further discussion? All those opposed? And any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Very good.
Hey, Drew, can I just, I'm not speaking on the application itself, but I just want to give credit to my alternate, Aaron Nanawan, who's also town board member, who did the bulk of that work on that law. So I know she's listening. So thank you, Aaron, for all that work.
Good. All right, thanks, Mike. Okay, Robert, last one is Mount Marion in the town of Saugerties. Any recusals? Okay, you're gonna do both of these together?
Yeah, it's a use variance and a area variance.
Okay,
So let's go to the aerial. This is Mount Marion Fire Department, Glasgow Turnpike, and Kings Highway. Proposed tower is proposed for about this location here. So the area variance has to do with distance for basically full area. And so a required modification with respect to that would be you can design these things to fall where you want them to fall. So they should fall on non-occupied, non-structured portions of the property, and that would be the required mod with that. Use variance, the town ZBA did not go through the Monroe test. They're elected not to use that, so it's going through the use variance, and I don't think we have any kind of impact on that with respect to going through the use variance.
What is the Monroe test?
The Monroe test it has to do with the fact that prior to the court case, which was Monroe versus the city of Rochester, the county Monroe versus the city of Rochester, there used to be a clear demarcation between governmental uses and non-governmental uses, and it was called proprietary and non-proprietary. And governmental uses that were deemed to be governmental uses were exempt from local zoning. You didn't have to, you didn't have to pass go or pay your $200. The Monroe court case said you're not. The Monroe court case said that invading governments, and I shouldn't use the word invading, encroaching governments, have a responsibility to essentially look at the zoning statute that of the municipality they're encroaching upon. And the municipality that they're encroaching on has a duty to essentially assess the balancing of public interest with respect to whether or not the application meets the requirements of the zoning statute. And there's a 9-part test that's set out to do that. And if they do meet the requirements in terms of balancing of the public interest tests, then they could be granted immunity from the local zoning statute. Key considerations are the ability of the local municipality to influence the application, the fact that you hold a public hearing, and also the fact that how much immunity are you seeking? Are you seeking an area variance? Are you seeking a use variance, et cetera? Once the determination is made, and if it's favorable to the encroaching municipality, they're no longer subject to zoning. This type of application applies to fire companies because fire companies are units of local government. And there's a case that basically says that if you're building a cell tower on a fire company's facility, that essentially a balancing of public interest test can be used to essentially not be subject to local zoning. Does that help?
Yes,
yes.
but it's not being used in this case, and what is the difference?
It's not, because I believe that the Zoning Board of Appeals is charged under the Saugerties zoning statute. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with making the determination with respect to the balancing of public interest test. We believe, we don't have specific evidence of it, but we believe that what ended up happening is that they did not grant the immunity to this company, and the company has the ability then and can essentially seek a use variance. And use variances for public utilities are decided differently than use variances for non-public utilities.
Right.
There's not an economic hardship question that comes into play with respect to use variances for public utility.
Yeah, we reviewed that one.
Thank you for
similarly when
clarifying
the
that.
Town of New Paltz
that-
one.
That was going to be my question of how they could prove a use variance, but you just
Yeah.
explained it. Thank you.
Now, Dennis, you and I had spoken about this morning. Because the planning board, even though the ZBA had sent this to the county, the planning board has essentially put it on hold indefinitely. They didn't say why, they didn't say for how long or anything like that. So I don't know how that's gonna factor into, to the
But
decision.
clearly, if they're granted the necessary variances, then the planning board would have to consider it.
Even though the planning board has essentially said, you know what, we're putting it on hold. Because that's
Well,
essentially what they
they've-
said.
Shot clock.
There's two ways to approach this. One is the planning board would have to consider it because they'd have a valid site plan in front of them. If they didn't consider it, they run into some time clock descriptions. The other thing is that there is some case law out there with respect to use variances, is once granted, you're done. You don't have to go to the planning board.
So essentially, if they meet all the requirements, they could just bypass the planning board and go right to the ZBA.
Well, it's not bypass the planning board, it's a jurisdictional issue. In other words, if the use is not permitted and the ZBA issues a use variances, then there's nothing in the statute that basically says having a use variance is that you have to go get a site plan review. There are attorneys that disagree with this, and there's case law that disagrees with this, but there is case law that says if you issue a use variance and you don't require planning board review as part of the use variance, then effectively what you've done is you've said yes.
All right, I see what you're saying. I'm just asking all this because to try to understand how the planning board's halt to it would come into play with this.
The short
we have
answer
a
is,
valid-
Vince, it
we have a-
probably wouldn't. They don't really have the jurisdiction to halt it.
Yeah.
Because they've come out, the town planning board has come out even in the newspaper, it said this. So that's why I don't even know how it's even legal to stop it.
They can say what they want is the short answer, Vince, but if the law is on the side of the applicant, probably, so it doesn't matter what they say.
It's probably why they're in
Yeah,
litigation.
Well, I think the key from the county planning board's perspective is we have a valid referral from the zoning board of appeals in Saugerties to consider in front of us, regardless of what the local planning board has or has not said.
Did we do a motion on that, Drew?
Not yet.
I didn't think
Robert,
so.
what was your
Yeah.
recommendation on this, Robert?
Thank you for
Still with
answering
us,
my
Robert?
question.
Wait, yeah, sorry, I muted myself. We didn't have any comments on the use variance test. We did have a required mod on the area variance regarding where the tower would fall if it had to fall.
Okay.
Thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate it. I just want to understand the who's and the what's behind it.
Basically, the comment was site designed to fall in area to non-occupied portions of the site.
I'll make that motion, Drew.
I'll second it,
Okay.
McLaughlin.
Would that cover ice as well? Because that's one of our concerns, is that ice falls off of these towers.
No, we're talking about the tower falling itself.
Right, but another concern is ice falling off of the tower, like the setback, does the setback allow for something that they aren't controlling how it falls?
The setback, I believe, in the zoning for towers when they're permitted is 1.5 times the height.
Right.
So that's what it is. So what we're basically saying is that we want to make sure that it doesn't fall on a structure. We haven't addressed the issue with respect to ice. So the answer to your question is no. We're really more concerned about the fact that, particularly with respect to the fire company, that it doesn't, in an emergency situation, it doesn't block a fire company from responding. Not that I'm not concerned about an adjoining residence, but I mean, the main thing here, my understanding is adjoining residence, it wouldn't fall on, but the main thing is that we don't relocate the tower, so it ends up, it could fall on the fire company itself.
Okay,
All right. Any other discussion? Okay. Any opposed?
Do you have a
Any-
motion?
Oh, yeah, with Mike.
I
thought Mike did.
I didn't have a second.
I second
That's what
it.
I'm looking for.
Yep, I thought Vince
Thank you,
Vince
Vince.
did.
Okay.
I thought Vince did it.
I missed it. Thank you. I'm
Okay,
sorry I missed
great.
it.
All right, we'll go do that again. Any
And Dennis,
opposed?
I don't know who we lost, but I've noticed we lost somebody along the way. We're down one person from when we started, so just if it matters in the votes.
Yeah,
No.
Okay,
I
let me
was,
find
I
out.
was on twice. I was on my iPhone
Oh.
because I couldn't get on my computer.
Okay, never mind. That
And then I
explains it.
got off on my phone.
That
Okay.
explains it.
Okay. All right. Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right, motion passes. And that's the last one.
So before we adjourn, I just have a quick, I guess, an expectation that, given what we're seeing with respect to COVID numbers, it would not be unexpected that the current way to meet remotely in terms of the executive order may disappear for April. So I want board members to just be aware of the fact that we may be meeting in person in April. Staff is currently looking at locations for that meeting, assuming that we won't be able to use the surrogate court. But if we are going to use this, can use a surrogate court, we obviously will. If not, we may be back at the college, looking at sites in the city of Kingston, and then also looking at the Marbletown Town Hall out in the town of Marbletown. But just be aware of the fact that we may find ourselves in a very short amount of time prior to the meeting, given the way these executive orders are extended or not, finding ourselves in a situation where we will have to meet in person next month.
Dennis, March 16th is it must be extended by that day. If it's not, it goes away. So,
Yeah, you're talking about the
Yeah.
state of emergency, right?
yes, correct.
Well, it's the executive order that deals with the open meetings law.
Actually, what they passed it so that the current statute in regards to the virtual meetings expires when the state of emergency expires.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
March 16th, Vince. So,
All right.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're all on the same page, Vince. We're just saying it differently.
Is there
So I'm
any
sorry, I know
cons-
we had a motion.
Sorry. Is there any
Amanda?
consideration to a hybrid meeting?
It won't be permitted under the statute.
Very difficult to do that correctly.
Yeah.
yeah, it's also not permitted. If the executive order expires, we have to go back to board
In
members
person.
have
Yeah.
to be in public.
Yep.
The only way you could not be in public is that you would have to disclose your location and be able to essentially participate in that way. And we would have to think of streaming services, et cetera. And for me, that's a logistical nightmare.
Absolutely.
Where was the meeting be held? Where was the meeting held in the past?
It was held in the county office building in the surrogate court.
Right down the
So
hall
why
from the
wouldn't it be
planning
held
office.
there? If the executive order is done, then there's no reason for them not to let us have it there.
Because the judge
Surrogates.
controls the surrogate court.
Yeah, the New
Well,
York
but
State.
that
court system
doesn't the governor
controls it.
control the judge?
No.
Well, no, the
Okay.
judge
No, it's the
controls.
court
it's her-
system that makes the
it's-
rules.
Okay.
It's the
Yeah.
surrogate court, it's the surrogate court's courtroom, and we need permission from the judge to use it.
We've
Right.
used it for years.
It's really tight.
Well, but things have
quarters.
changed since the pandemic.
Oh, boy.
That's what I will tell you. Things have changed since the pandemic.
Right. And the other problem for those members that haven't been in the surrogate court, it's a pretty tight room for
Yeah.
20 some odd people plus visitors. So,
Yeah.
If I can put in my 2 cents, I'd prefer the Kingston area because going out by Ulster County Community College can be pretty difficult during the winter.
Will
Yeah.
be April.
Point.
It'll be.
No, this will become a continuing situation.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
their
Well,
strikes,
we'll-
209.
So
All right.
I didn't mean to start a long discussion at this time of the evening. I just wanted to prepare you for the fact that we may have to meet in person.
right. Thank you, Dennis. I was going to ask that question myself. All right,
I would
anybody want to
say-
make a motion to close the meeting for the night?
Move it.
Second?
Mike Baden.
Mitchell seconds.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, okay, very good.
Nice.
Good
Good
night,
night,
guys.
See you
Thank
next
you,
month.
everyone.
Night.
Good night. Be well.
Night.
Thank you.